Hello and welcome to the CX Files podcast. I'm your host, Mark Hillary. In this podcast, I'm speaking with Maurice Pentel, who's the chairman of the CX Foundation, about voice of the customer analysis and why so many companies are still getting all of this wrong. The CX Foundation is a global network of CX experts, students, owners, and customers. It's a private foundation dedicated to best practice in CX. I saw Maurice speaking recently at the CX Tech conference in London, and his focus on emotional voice of the customer analysis really struck a chord with the audience. Okay, so let's go straight to the interview. I suppose probably the most important thing is just to summarize what you're talking about as emotional voice of customer and how that differs from what we traditionally talk about. Because, normally when we hear companies doing VOC programs, it's really they're talking about things like surveys.
So there are several differences. Difference number one is that voice of the customer is something that's going on whether you're asking a survey or not. But it also includes behavior of the customer as much as the voice. So if you think of, I hate to be a pedant and a scientist, but only 7% of human communication is actually verbal. Mm-hmm. So when 97% of people don't actually want to answer your surveys, they are telling you with their body language, if nothing else, exactly what they think.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So in terms of the basic parts of this, number one is that it isn't just about the voice of the customer post-survey that we're interested in. We're interested in the voice of the customer throughout any interaction, be that human or in a digital form. And I'll maybe speak to that if that's of interest to you. But what we're looking at is not just why do it post-event, why not do it as you go, use language that people understand in order to ask the questions, and I'll come back to that in a second, and then use it to fix the experience that's actually happening at the moment.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And so is that capturing comments then throughout the entire customer journey?
Yes. Why not?
I suppose practically then, how would you do that? I mean, are we talking about voice calls or just different types of interaction? I mean, all the way through the journey, I guess you could say that there's very many different types of engagement between the customer and the brand.
Exactly. And what we're saying is that if you accept that there are general principles and specific examples in the way that we think about things and do things, then what we've done in terms of voice of the customer is we've become very focused on very specific examples, but not on the general principle of finding out what the customer thinks as they're going through their journey. Mm-hmm. So it may well be that one particular page, so when we're thinking about analysing the emotional journey of the customer and where that's slightly different, is although we talk about emotion, we're actually talking about experience. So where something takes someone slightly longer to do than you'd think it would take, or where people abandon shopping carts, or where people behave in different ways, then to some extent that's a very good moment to ask them a question why. Mm-hmm. And ideally to solve the problem for them then, because if you're doing it on Amazon, that's exactly what's going to happen, or pretty close to.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, from my point of view, the voice of the customer, first of all, those pieces, and then the final bit of that is we ask the voice. When we talk about voice of the customer, we compare them with the wrong questions. Mm-hmm. So if you just read the verbatims that the customers say and you compare them with the survey answers they give, the two do not correlate well. So they may give someone a higher net promoter score, but only because they don't know what else to do, and then their comments are completely contiguous to that. Mm-hmm. Not contiguous. Sorry, but you know what I mean. So it may well be that the voice of the customer is a bigger subject than clients tend to think it is, mm-hmm. but they tend to use complicated words that make it very difficult for the customers to understand what's being said to them, and for organisations to understand what the customer is saying. So my example would be, yes, it was okay, the call was okay, yes, the agent was very polite, but no, it didn't solve my problem, and no, I'm not happy with you. That's really the outcome of the phone call. Think what kind of complexity you'd need to go through to get that out of a phone call with the traditional model.
Yeah, absolutely, because normally, I suppose when we're looking at a VOC program, we're talking about feedback, and what you're talking about is creating specific insights all the way along the customer journey that could possibly trigger a need to interact directly.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. And we, to stick my commercial hat on, we could take normal voice of the customer data and provide additional insight into it because we are OK-centered maths. Mm-hmm. So, the other big piece from me is that we don't think in terms of 1 to 10. We think about things in terms of OK, less than OK, better than OK, a little, a lot, too much, too many. Not 1 to 10.
Okay, and so let's say that I'm a mobile phone brand, and I've got a very traditional kind of survey response VOC system, and then I hear you speaking at a conference about this emotional VOC. How, what would be the most important steps that I would need to take, or what are the steps that are generally lacking, I guess, in your opinion, when you talk to some of your clients?
So the first thing, the first answer is not the one you want to hear, which is the short answer is, let us listen to some of your phone calls and we'll tell you what's wrong. We'll scare the hell out of you in about 5 minutes. Because from a practical point of view, things like, is the customer angry and what are we doing about it, scream out. Mm-hmm. So, do you want your voice of the customer program to alert you to that or not is something. But it depends on where the customer is psychologically. And what I mean by that is, it may well be that what a customer would like to do is to try our model and see if they get any more insight as a result of it.
Yeah.
All right, and that's quite simple to do. Mm-hmm. It may well be that what they'd like to do is some kind of pilot in order to test it. Or it may well be, as I say, the other option is, let's have a look at what you're doing at the moment and we'll write you a report. We'll scare the hell out of you.
But I guess then the problem is that sometimes they don't know what they're missing, because if they're just thinking about it as a direct replacement for an existing VOC program, then that's not what you're offering, is it?
Well, no, that's an assumption on your part. So, what I will find is what I will find, and what I will offer will be relevant to where they are today, not to what I need to sell them.
Right.
Yeah, it may well be that all they need to do is to change some wording in their VOC program, and then live with that for a bit. Hmm. It may well be that they need to be doing something else. It may well be that the person who is the new client is an incumbent with a whole series of historical burning platforms and other issues. Mm-hmm. My work operates in the real world, So, for instance, for a client at the moment, although they'd like a voice of the customer program, what they'd like to do is to start with a voice of the staff program, and they'd like to incorporate some things into that, so we're going to create them a bot. Mm-hmm. And that bot's going to collect some feedback, and that bot will engage them for about 10 or 15 minutes or something, and we'll give them an experience, and we'll give them access to various things. Mm-hmm. Now, that's a completely different outcome to the one that I described at the conference, where what I was talking about was listening to phone calls and then saying, how angry is the customer at the beginning of the call, and how angry is the customer at the end of the call? What can you do to improve that? Yeah, or you're already collecting all of this data. Why don't you simply run it through this different algorithm and see what you get?
Yeah. So I guess in summary, every client is different. But I suppose, are there any like ABC recommendations? I mean, when you talk to a client initially, is there something that always kind of stands out then that helps them understand what you're talking about?
So there's a couple of pieces to that. The first one is, how many things can you think of that are a perfect 10? Mm-hmm. And the short answer is not enough.
Yeah.
How many things can you think of that are okay? All right, so basically what you're doing with your customers at the moment is you're asking them to score them on a system that you can't think of a way of making work, because that's what was handed down at your business school back in the day. Mm-hmm. All right. If I was to ask you to think of 10 things that you think are okay, or slightly better than okay, or slightly worse than okay, or more than or a little, you'd be able to think of 10 things relatively quickly.
Yeah.
So what we're doing is we're saying human communication, as in the way societies work, as in the way doctors diagnose us, as in the way sociologists diagnose us, as in the way social workers engage with us, as in the way with how it works in the world, act one way and business acts another.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
By acting the way that people do, you then have a quantifiable science that follows the rules of physics. Mm-hmm. So you can actually mathematically build experiences.
Thanks for listening to the CX Files podcast. Please tell your friends and contacts about the podcast by sharing it using the hashtag #CXFiles. And if you can leave a comment and rating on iTunes, that would be fantastic. Thank you in advance. I'm always open to ideas and suggestions, so if you want topics explored or covered on the podcast, you can find me using @MarkHillary on Twitter. That's Hillary with 2 L's. Or just search LinkedIn for Mark Hillary and CX Files. Thank you and see you next time.